I would like to start in time so that we all can have the chance to listening to two exquisite presentations that we will have the pleasure to and the privilege to listen to today. It is one presentation by Jean-Éric, and he will present sort of the scenarios for the 21st century. I will let Jean-Éric, he will be starting, and after him, we will have Françoise Roure, and she will be presenting the Global Foresight Readiness Index. And this is something quite extraordinary. So we hope that this will spark some interest from the audience and maybe to see also what kind of impact and how we can take these scenarios further. I know that the future scenarios has already been published in a book, but I will let now the word to Jean-Éric Aubert to start. And Jean-Éric can, I will let you introduce yourself because I think it's better you do it yourself. And then also please tell us about these fantastic future scenarios that you have been working on together with a big team, I believe. Okay, so please.
I am the president of the Foundation 2100, which is in fact a foundation established under the CNRS, the Fondation CNRS. So we are under the aegis of this CNRS Foundation, CNRS being the main research supporting body in France. And I'm going to present something which in fact I have already presented in Madrid. But in being here a little bit more detailed, and being then followed by the presentation of this future readiness measurement index by my colleague, who is member of the committee for leading the Foundation 2100, Françoise Roure, that you will hear in the second part of this presentation. So just for advancing on these future scenarios, I would take you for 20 minutes, no more, and then we can have some time for discussion afterwards. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. In fact, we have published the book, which is a small book. In fact, the publisher wanted something that people can put in their pocket, and it's a 230 page, something like that, in a very small format. And that was the idea for facilitating, I would say, the thinking about the long-term future. And it has been published about a month ago, and it will likely be translated into English and published in the next year. So I was the main director with a colleague, and other colleagues participated in it, notably Françoise, that you are going to hear afterwards. The next slide just present the content of the book. There is the one part, which is the half of it, which is about the megatrends. We are going to shape the future of human societies over the century. And the second part is about scenarios. There are four major scenarios that I will briefly explain later on. We have looked also to some global catastrophes, but in being very briefly documenting them, no more, not going into detailed scenarios, but mentioning them as important event, of course. So let's go to the next slide and see what are these mega trends. So there are three major trends or factors we are going to play a key role all over the centuries. First, all disturbance and shift regarding the planet, and notably the climate change, which is going to have a major impact. There is, of course, the demography, which is with probably some ceiling to be reached by the world population, around 10 billion of people, but with important north-south disequilibrium and imbalance, leading to important migrations, notably in the second part of the century. And of course, there is technology, and we see already massive impact that the digital and the artificial intelligence have already, but there are other coming, all what we call the nano, biotech, and so on, is going to have a major dissemination starting probably in the next 10 years and ongoing the rest of the century. The question which is really put to us is the possible loss of control of such technological change. And we see already the debate that is in fact flaring up. If we go to the next slide, then we have three other type of megatrends, but which are in fact more game changers in the next decades, with relatively negative trends and positive weak signals. The negative are mostly related to geopolitics. The economics are also, I would say, relatively concerning. On the other hand, on the society side, there are evolving values which are in fact observed in most part of the world, and also increasing new type of relation to nature and to life, which is in fact changing the way the people see their position and their life on Earth, which could be with very positive change in behaviors. Then, based on this megatrends, which are in fact described in half of the book, we move to the scenarios. And here I'm going to go through the scenarios quickly. If we can have the next slide. For making those scenarios, we have made what we call a kind with crossroads, or in which you can change sometime if you think you are not on the right trajectory, or if you decide to change. We have that in fact three periods, more or less 25 to 2040. Then this period of turbulence, which are not very strong. Then around 2050 there will be increasing turbulence, and societies will really go through a real change, and probably they will have to adapt, and they will have adapted by the end of the century for the last decades of the century. Regarding the behaviors, we have taken, in fact, four major behaviors, which are, they apply, in fact, for individuals as well as for the humankind as a whole. When you are facing a problem in your life, you can be proactive, so you know what you are, you know your competence, and you decide to build on that in a more proactive way. Or you can transform your behavior because you think that you are not on the right way to deal with the new issue. You can be defensive, and in fact you withdraw on yourself and you protect yourself and you don't change. Or you are in fact in an inertia and you are paralyzed in face of this situation. So we have developed four major scenarios along those lines, which I will briefly describe with some schemes, in fact. If we can go to the next slide. So this is typically the scenario of being proactive, in which, in fact, you embark yourself with, in fact, this techno-solutionism, which is basically what the mindset today. The technology will bring the solution. We don't change our model of functioning at the level of humankind as a whole. Then we adapt the technology to the society, possibly in going a bit further in some types of transhumanism. And because we are more or less successful with this adaptation with technology, and we integrate some humanistic values in it, we come up with a scenario that we call the techno-humanism at the end of the century. And most of the problems have been more or less resolved without too much difficulties. That implies that we are living in a world which is relatively peaceful all along the trajectory, and in which also we are living with some form of democratic control of technology, and we are successful, notably for coping efficiently with the limit of resource and climate change, which is more or less contained under 3 degrees above the threshold that we know. That is what you call the proactive blue scenario. Let's go to the next scenario, which is, in fact, this is really I would say, the transformative scenario. And we consider that we have to change our economic model. We change completely the production system. We become much more ecological. We go through a process by which we call what is altered development in the next 2 decades. And then we move to some form of solidarity and subsidiarity at the world level, coping with the need notably of the developing world. We avoid going into green dictatorship or fragmentation of the world into eco-communitarian. So we go with the large green arrows. And at the end, we arrive to what we call the symbiocene, which is the opposite of the Anthropocene, which is a kind of harmony between humankind and nature. And this is the proactive, optimistic scenario. I'm not going to say that it's the most probable. In fact, it's certainly less probable than the blue one we had before. But nevertheless, we thought useful to have also this utopian positive attitude. Let's go now to the 2 negative and concerning scenarios. This one, in fact, is based on what we call the withdrawal, defensive withdrawal. It's a red scenario in which we go with a world of fortress in blocks. There is a reorganization of the world geopolitics around blocks. We don't care too much about the climate change and resource limits. The people, in fact, also are under some form of authoritarian regime. And at the end, this system, which doesn't necessarily explode into a global world war, but which remain, in a sense, with what we call surround blocks at the world level, is something which, if we continue along the lines we are embarked since a few years, may well happen. And the probability of going to such a scenario, if the geopolitics tension that we know continue, the probability is not negligible. Let's go to the 4th scenario, major scenario, which is the other negative one, and which is related to the situation of inertia that we call in French, and I believe it exists also in English, this word, the procrastination. That means facing the need to act, but being unable to act because there are other urgent matters to deal, notably political and matters for elections, for instance, or because there are defense issues or war issue that needs to be resolved before others like climate change. And this type of inertia, if it's going to be perpetuated throughout the rest of the century, that is the black arrow that you see on this scheme, we go through a chaotic world in which large part of the planet will be, in fact, collapsing. We should be aware that in any event, some parts of the planet will collapse. We go with a situation regarding climate change, probably above 3 or even 4 degrees Celsius above the situation of pre-industrial, and we know that the problem is clear. It's too hot and too humid in large part of the world. It will be like that. So a large part of population will be obliged to move, and some part of the world will be collapsed. So in any event, that will appear. The question is how large these areas will be. But it's part of the story. So that is, in fact, some generic style of scenarios. And I would like just to conclude briefly in saying that what we wanted to provide is, with this word generic, is a way of thinking about the future, even if it's not very realistic to take humankind as a whole. At least it allows to think about what could be the main way, the main behavior. So we can move to the next slide if it's possible. Thank you. We have summarized the main scenarios. In fact, there are 2 other ones which are not developed here, which are more minor in terms of, I would say, probability. But these 4 main scenarios should provide a kind of framework for thinking about. At the end, it's likely that, in fact, different parts of the world, different regions, even possibly different cities in the same countries, will adopt different types of behaviors inspired by these different types of scenarios. The question is what will be possible for having I would say, a coexistence between them. That's a big issue. In any event, and I would like to conclude about that, there are irreversibility. You cannot go back to certain scenarios, certain trajectory, if you have not taken the right path at the beginning. So what is going to be done in the next 2 decades is going to be fundamental for the future, precisely because of this irreversibility. But this is obvious in relation to climate change, but it applies also to technology. If we don't master and control adequately technology, it could be very destructive for humankind in terms of the impact of the mind and so on, even if there are fantastic opportunities, notably with artificial intelligence, for instance. So this it's very fundamental to take the right path in the next decades, and that applies to the environmental and climate issues. That applies to technology, as well as at the end, the major, I would say, condition is a peaceful planet. And unfortunately, we are not embarked today in a peaceful planet. So this is what I wanted to summarize. And of course, I am at your disposal for responding. Just to see what this is, in fact, a summary of the recommendation, and you have the information on how to contact us in the next slides. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for having done that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jean-Luc, for this very, very interesting presentation. I think it's really, really interesting, and I think we will open the floor for questions. I just have one for you because the subtitle is towards worst or best, and what is your idea? You have presented here 2 scenarios with a somewhat positive outcome, and then 2 scenarios with quite negative outcomes. So what would be are you the optimist or the pessimist in your view, because you have done the study?
That's an interesting question. My own understanding, but that's commit only myself, not necessarily the other authors. And you can ask Françoise, who is here, also about a viewpoint. My own perception of the way people's in fact behave is that before going into the world, they don't really change. So it's likely that we will go through a very difficult situation in the next decades. I would say up to 2050, with increasing problem related to technical change, related to climate change, and so on. And unfortunately, the people won't be really able to change because the usual short-term approach and the other power struggles and so on will dominate. And after this difficult time, we may expect then going back to much better behaviors, but we will suffer in the next decades. At the end, I am optimistic, but not without a difficult time before.
You can tell your question, and then it's Stefan after Sylvie. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I placed, Eric, my question in the chat because it's rather long. So I would say, why would behaviors occur sequentially over time rather than, as in your partial collapse scenario, occur simultaneously all the time with a percentage of the population adopting each behavior? And the issue then becomes what percentage from where and whom are adopting these behaviors. How does that translate into strength? If we're thinking, for example, some nations have more influence, if you wish, have more impact. And how do we influence change, which might be François' next coverage. So sorry about the length of the question, but maybe you can give your thought.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvie, for the question. Maybe I was not very clear in the presentation. What in fact what we say is that at the beginning there is an attitude. We take only one type of behavior, and we consider that the large majority of the world population is dominated by this behavior. So there is no really a kind of, I would say, simultaneously. There is no simultaneous, I would say, behavior in our model initially. The idea is to have something, I would say, which is a bit simplified and idealistic, in which there is, in one period, one single behavior. And then we go like that. After we imagine, for instance, that there is this crossroad in which there is possibility for changing the behavior, but that would be in the second period, for instance, after 2050. That's what is behind. If we introduce the percentage of the world population with certain types of behaviors and so on and so on, it makes the model much more complex, and we are not able to enter in this. We wanted just to provide some generic framework. Would that respond to your question, Sylvie? All right, thank you.
Hey, so Stefan, can we hear your question, please?
Thanks, Ingrid. Jean-Eric, you mentioned evolving values. Aren't values exactly the main question? So in the West, values have evolved tremendously in the last decades. They will probably continue so. And the way they evolve will actually trigger society in one of your scenario or another. So isn't that the main place where action should be or should take place?
In fact, you point your finger on a very fundamental issue, and I would say weakness of the work. Because we didn't develop really the reason why some values will really change and shift towards, I would say, positive attitude, and except that we said, I would say, negative attitude or inertia and so on, or in relation to peace or to nature or what else. We think they can change only if there is a brutal deterioration, brutal degradation of the whole situation of the planet, caused by climate change, caused by geopolitics or war and so on. But we didn't enter into the detail which would make the change happening. So in fact, I agree with you. In fact, if we want to make progress in what we propose in terms of policy action, definitively we need to go much more in detail about how to change mindsets. Would that respond to your question, Stéphane?
Yes, partly, because I guess this is a difficult question, in fact, because we need to understand why the values have changed or why there are turbulences in the value system in some countries. Why is that taking place? What reaction it provokes? And only then we will understand how the future could look like.
But it's typically, I would say, a second stage of work that you are opening a very important avenue.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Latif Ladid here. Thank you for that very impressive forecast for the next 80 years that are left for us. And your 4 scenarios, they already exist at the same time. Okay. Now, you picture technology to be doing a lot of good for the world. As a matter of fact, it's 2 facets of technology. You have peaceful technology and non-peaceful technology. Recently I've been talking to some developers of AI solutions for consultants for the big companies. And it's quite amazing that if you put all the data of the company, so the personnel, even by name and so on and so forth, and tell the software to say, how can they optimize the company? It tells you by name of a person. About 30 to 50% can be fired and even more profitable. So I would expect that technology has really to be governed properly in the future, because today it's not government at all, be it the good one or the bad one. So I think we should put a lot of effort how to make technology to be very generic, as well as very well adopted according to certain peaceful ideas and politics. We see that today we have a lot of technology, but we have a lot of wars, and they come from technology. Thank you.
Yeah, you are also putting your finger on this issue of technology, which is obviously, I would say, a key game changer somewhere in the way it is going to be adopted. If it's well managed, of course it would be a real savior. The problem is that we have never seen in human history a kind of control of technology by whatever. We have seen people, some ideology trying to block it, some trying to push it, but it seems to be like life. And you can't control life. You can't prevent life to in fact come up and sometimes being blocked. You never know where it can jump off and so on. So that's regarding the policy dimension in the noble terms of policy. it's an issue which remains unsolved, if I may say. But I join you in this pivotal role of technology.
Thank you.
Okay, we have some more questions. Yeah, we have somebody who's asking about the presentation. Yes, it will be available on the Global Forum website. So this presentation you can have a look at, and you can. So Jean-Luc, I have also a question to you, because question connects a little bit to Latif's question. So when we're looking at, I mean, usually what McKinsey and others, and for businesses, and what they're looking at, they're giving you the risks for the next 10 years, or maybe 5 years. And your scenario is much longer. So how do you see that this book and these sort of scenarios up to the 21st century will be important for businesses to understand and to read? So just on the, because you use the word business as usual in the term, but I'm just looking at corporations being small, big, being what would you see? I mean, because I have been connected with some business schools, and also sometimes asked to do presentations. So I was thinking, what can we do this for? Can this be an interesting for CEOs, for students, whoever, in business environment?
That's that's a key a key question, because in fact it's very relevant for business people, even if there is a tendency to generally think apart from, I would say, in the area of energy or insurance sectors. Usually the business sectors don't look very far beyond 10 years, and many are often focused on 5 years plan. But precisely what the message of this work is, that is because these irreversible trends, and because they are such important and such massive size, the irreversibility may come very soon if you don't act already now. You need to act now, or I would say in the next decades, next 2 decades maximum, if you don't want to be in a situation which could be very problematic for the rest of the century. So the need to do something very soon for the business people, because at the end this is the driver. It's what the business is going to do, which will determine the situation by mid of the century, or at the end of the century. So it's very relevant for business people to think about. And we are in France with some colleagues, including the former associate to McKinsey, for instance, who tried to push some seminars based on our scenarios to move the business people into some form of thinking and action. So it's also meaningful to do that in business schools, of course, with the youth, future managers. And Françoise is going to present you precisely indicators which are directly related to the way the business are managed, and which are in relation to such scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hope that these scenarios really can go further. And also, I think it's important also to put the mitigation aspects into the context, because this is critical. And how can we mitigate into making it? Yeah. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Please, Guido.
Jean-Éric, just one simple question. I think, geographically speaking, do you think that the scenario will occur at the global level, or there will be some regions or macro regions that will be affected more or less? Uh, Everybody is speaking about the global south and the north, but if you see, for example, the widest geographical states area in the world in this moment is Russia, which is in the north. So also this misunderstanding of the geography could have some reflex in your scenarios or not?
In fact, there is only one part, only one scenario on which we have entered into a kind of geographic discussion, is the scenario on the partial collapse of the planet, because there was a need to provide some, in fact, some views where the collapse would happen most likely, if there is really a global warming and so on. So this is the only part where we have gone into, I would say, differentiation between world regions. Voilà, this is but it's a matter, I would say, on a book of 230 pages. It's something which is described in 2 pages, no more. Some questions which are put on the chat. The green dictatorship, in fact, it's an authoritarian regime which impose very, very strong rules in the way you behave and whether you have an ecological behavior. I'm not going to quote some specific example of countries, but you can imagine whatever you can do with the camera to see whether you have, or if you have good system for measuring your electricity consumption and so on. You can perfectly control completely a society to impose a very strong ecological behavior. This is what is behind, with penalties and so on. Let me just conclude before closing. Notably, this notion of techno-humanism that is Ingrid who has put the notion of ethics, human rights, and so on, the center of technology, is something that, in fact, was in we have been inspired by a book which was published in 1990. It was a big study done by the French Research Ministry, by a team of 500 experts, which was led at that time by someone who's called Thierry Gaudin, who is, in fact, I am really a friend of Thierry as well as Françoise. And we have been, in fact, inspired by this work, which was presenting a story for the 21st century. Only one story, at the difference of our stories, which is, in fact, several scenarios. There was only one scenario, and it was a techno-humanistic, very close to the first scenario, the blue one I've presented. And I wanted just to mention that because if you find the book, which is about 500 pages with a lot of photography and nice story, you can in fact imagine what means techno-humanism with ethics, right, and so on, which need not to be adapted to the nanotechnology, the biotech, and artificial intelligence, which is a real issue in terms of techno-humanism. So let me stop at this stage, because we need to leave enough space to Françoise, who has very interesting stories.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we have a strict timekeeping here. So, and I think now it is time to leave the floor for Françoise Roure, who will present to us the Global Foresight Readiness Index. And we are all very excited to hear what this is all about and how it also connects to the scenarios. So, Françoise, would you be so kind to introduce yourselves? I know you have many hats, and I know that you have been active in many different public institutions on policy and on research. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Today, I'm just a committee member of the Foundation 2100. I have had several positions in my life. By and large, I'm an economist in the field of real economy, not financial ones, that is to say industrial and international economics. And I've had positions within the French Ministry of Finance, Economy and Finance. The last one was about chairing the Committee for Safety and Security within the Office of the Inspector General. And at the intergovernmental level, I've been chairing at the OECD level for the Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation, the committee which was in charge of nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technologies, including AI, and also cognitive technologies. And when we talk about convergence, the C of NBIC is very much important because we are dealing with a culture, we are dealing with attitudes, and we are dealing with our own futures, in fact. So otherwise, I've been chairing the ISO working party, the OECD working party for nanotechnology before the Converging Technologies one, been member of the World Economic Forum Converging Technology panel, etc., etc. So my background is about emerging technologies and the impact and safety and risk that it creates for the societies. That's all for this moment. If I can go to my presentation, Jean-Eric was talking about the longer, the larger, the deeper view of foresight. I would like to go back to the Earth with an initiative which has been taken by the Foundation, which is about giving tools available for organizations who wish to, but also another one, which is a serious game I will talk to you about, that is to say, for beginners in the field of foresight. So please, next slide. What we would like to do is to present a vibrant framework for the Global Foresight Readiness Index. What we'd like to do is to say that this index would represent a significant advancement in improving qualitative and quantitative decision-making, as well as complexity reduction, and as such providing a competitive advantage to early adopters. Why adopting an index like that would be a competitive advantage? Because it would transform the level and also the means of the conversation with partners and also with all the constituencies, including the customers. So that's important to bear that in mind. So this tool would provide a pervasive dissemination of a long-term and future-oriented culture, which is exactly at the heart of the mission of our foundation. And this is an attitude of foresight for good, that is to say, choosing a desirable future. And it means the call for imagination, creative experience, humanity, and responsibility. I'd like to say one thing here is that about the attitude toward the future, being pessimistic or optimistic, it depends on the level of responsibility you wear. You can be on an individual basis very pessimistic, but on a collective basis, once you recognize your own part of responsibility, then you're going to act. And this is where it begins to be interesting. This Global Foresight Readiness Index would elaborate upon users' experience as an individual commitment first step, that is to say, how do I position myself towards the future, and engaging after that the whole organization's community to measure readiness dynamics. Measurement is all about the index. So the initiative covers a couple of tools, and those tools are at the proof of concept stage in this year before wider implementation. And this index also will be shared and will enter a learning process. I'd like to say that this initiative is covered by a Creative Commons license, non-commercial and international, that is to say that it is open to co-construction. This is the interesting point. Next slide, please. So foresight readiness, it demands a proactive stance toward alternative futures. I'd like to give an image there. Playing chess or playing poker or playing the Go game in Asian cultures is about working with a strategy, and the strategy is about meeting a cap. But ahead of this cap, choosing the cap, can it be skipped or not? If we cannot skip the way by which we choose a cap, then we had better being ready in the field of foresight. So we are not about future readiness here, but about foresight readiness, the way by which you ensure your organization has the right tools in order to meet the requirements. I'd like to give one example. You've heard about what is called the Dubai Future Readiness Index, which is comprising 5 key pillars and no less than 66 sub-indicators. And this Dubai Future Readiness Index offers a governmental perspective on future preparedness. But it implies foresight readiness, but it doesn't fit the Global Foresight Readiness Index purpose, which focuses on foresight awareness, foresight preparedness, and foresight response. So this is our ambition. So this index intends to measure fundamental capacities that characterize foresight-ready organizations with long-term foresight awareness. So long-term may be the good term, depends on the organization, but the longer you view, the easier it is to communicate with your constituencies and partners, because there is no conflict at the immediate stage. So sharing a long-term foresight is something which can be open for co-construction more easily. Foresight preparedness, including the detection capacity, including the ability to systematically scan horizons and also identify relevant emergent signals of change. So after awareness and preparedness, as we commonly say, there is foresight response capacity, that is to say the capability to analyze implications and develop appropriate strategy or plans. So this is what this index is for. And then once this is done once, you have this evolution capacity in the short run. That is to say, you measure the organizational flexibility to transform oneself, to transform systems, structures, and strategies to thrive in well-anticipated futures. And then you are in a better position to choose the future you would like to live. The next slide, please. So what are the two proofs of concept dedicated to those intricate objectives? We've got the proof of concept on a premium application for organizations who would like to adopt the professional version of this index under international ICT safety, reporting, and confidentiality rules. That's important here. And you have a second tool, which I will develop just after. For the first one, this premium application for organization, we would have the capacity to improve anticipatory governance, that is to say at the board levels in particular, being responsive towards the board members in particular. That would give credit to environmental sustainability and social accountability. This index would expand the risk scope and description required, for instance, for listed companies, but not only. This would be, the adoption of index would be on a voluntary scheme, open for co-construction. At that moment, we have no label or certification other than the foundation GFRN mentioned under the Creative Commons. We do not intend to create at this moment a private certification, but if there is a need for that, we should be open to that either. I don't talk about accreditation because accreditation is something to be dealt with public authorities. That's very, very problematic, and this is not our intention at all at the moment. And then the second tool is would be a web app available on mobile devices in the form of a serious game for beginners in the field of foresight readiness. And this game would allow to measuring up to which point individuals already are future-oriented in their structuring decisions. This game would help to raising individual awareness about the benefits of foresight readiness. This would harness the foresight readiness attractivity for public at large and lay people, and opening larger, deeper, and longer view before crucial decision making and maybe radical bifurcations. So this is a game that would be available on web apps, and that would not take a lot of time, but it would be possible to make it, to play it several times, and see how people can evolve according to this preparation, to aptitude to the future. Next slide, please. Well, back to the premium application for organization. We have designed a 10-point ranking framework, which includes each of one of the 10-point ranking framework, include qualitative and also quantitative indicators. I will give you 2 examples just after the presentation of the slide. And those 10 points are to be measured, so with a scoring. This is what's interesting for everybody, scoring, which can be kept secretly for each organization. And from the foundation point of view, there could be some kind of sharing of the scoring, but on an anonymous aspect. That is to say that there would be a clear separation between information that an organization is given for oneself or itself, and the sharing of a kind of scoring. I can give an example after. So first of all, foresight, cultural readiness. The second one, the second indicator would be the temporal scope and horizon diversity, which is very important because we have to define very precisely those terms. The third one is about environmental scanning sophistication, the way by which an organization is scanning the environment. The fourth one is about foresight integration in strategy. A decade ago, we would have talked about the strategic planning. Now it's obsolete, so I just skip to strategy. The fifth one is about methodological rigor of foresight tools and use and the diversity of those tools. The sixth one is about scenario development and alternative future. I just take 1 minute here to say that a scenario development and showing alternative futures is increasing the intelligence of an organization towards its environment. And if we come back to the presentation of Jean-Éric just before, what we have proposed is generic scenarios, a set of generic scenarios, and that could be taken into consideration in order to develop the organization relevant scenarios. So each organization is ready to write its own narratives about that. And here the index wants to measure the capacity to make scenarios development and to express alternative futures for the strategists to choose among them. Always about measuring. Then the seventh one is implementation capacity. The eighth one about an organizational learning system. The ninth one is about stakeholders engagement. You know what it is. That is to say that's true for a board. That's also true for exercises related to foresight readiness. Stakeholders engagement provide a wider view and helps strengthening and harnessing the foresight culture. So that this is more important than how it is written. And the 10th one is about the ethical aspects and confidential Global Foresight Readiness Index framework. That is to say that when entering the index, an organization should feel comfortable with very good reasons that its own strategic information doesn't leak anywhere. That's of crucial importance. And so the foundation is ready to provide a tool. The foundation is ready also to elaborate about scoring and about the synthesis on different scorings, but it will never enter any risk about information leaking or so what. By design, it will be safe. This is what I can tell. Next slide, please. So just not to take too much time, I'd like to give two examples about qualitative and quantitative indicators in this 10-point ranking framework. For the two first, the first one is about foresight culture readiness. And also what I will say is that this is at a proof of concept level and can be adapted at will. And so this is just a proposal at that moment, just to give an indication. So for foresight culture readiness, the qualitative indicator could be leadership messages incorporating foresight, survey results on the receptiveness to change, which is important because foresight has a meaning if it is able to have a backlash to impact the transformation experience of an organization in the short run. Otherwise, it stays a study, and what do we do with the study if we do not implement anything? The quantitative indicator could be the percentage of budget allocated to foresight or number of dedicated staff when we have an organization which is important enough in staff to have this kind of indicator, which might not be the case for very, very recent seed capital enterprises. So it has to be adapted indeed. If we consider the second on the 10-point ranking framework, the second indicator is about temporal horizon diversity. And what can be proposed that a qualitative indicator could be analysis of strategic documents and media coverage of time horizons. And we see this is a touchy issue, which can diverge among different organizations, sectors, etc., etc. And then a quantitative indicator could be distribution of projects by time horizons, for instance, 50% in short term, 30% in medium term, and 20% in long term. So you see that there are no judgments about the bad guys or not ready, but this is a set of indicators that allow scoring and that allow comparison of an organization towards itself in time in order to see how this preparedness, readiness and response has been taken up by those who decide for the enterprise. And that is the first point, and also maybe to allow a comparison by scoring and not by content with other companies and maybe other sectors, other continents, other cultures. It depends on the filters that will be relevant and will be adopted by the foundation in the future. So you see, this is a matter of co-construction at this moment, just an illustration of what could be done. And next slide, please. So how would you name a serious game available for foresight readiness beginner? That is a question, that is a teaser for you, each of participants. Our serious game didn't receive but a tentative name at that moment. I cannot share with you, but we would be happy to have your input. So there will be 10 questions with 5 possible answers each. User experience and results would be available for researchers involved in the early design. When I say 2 minutes only to answer, this is, yes, a bold objective, but why not? Only 2 minutes. The scoring could be downloadable if required. This game would be anonymous with auditory information given by the gamer, never mandatory, never mandatory. There would be in the back office filters for analysis. We are also bold in the quantity of languages, including numerous different alphabets or ideograms. I'm speaking about Japan, China, Korea in particular. This game would be diversity cultures friendly, with a simplicity of design that allows sharing without being confused on the sense of the questions. That is very important for us. And also this serious game would be open for an assessment, an ongoing multi-criteria assessment, and a learning process by the foundation that proposes. So if you have a name for this serious game, welcome. And now, welcome the questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Françoise. This was a super interesting presentation and also very forward-thinking. So foresight at the core. And I think we have a question here from Sylvie. She has posted it in the chat, but let's take that question. Sylvie, please ask it since you are here now. Okay.
Sorry, I feel like I'm dictating all the questions here, but I'll first pass a comment. I really like that last part of the presentation. Forget about all of us old farts and companies. Let's focus on the youth and having them, if we're going to change any culture or values, is going to be with the youth. So if we can have tools at the starting very young to influence values, I think that is probably the only way that we will win at this game. But my question is around the concept of the GFRI and how it layers into what is already an existing, very significant undertaking by most organizations in risk management. So risk is defined by industry, quite different to what you would look at in transportation versus a financial company, for example. And boards already are very involved in looking at foresight in terms of what could happen to the company short and long term. So I'm wondering how the GFRI layers into this already significant undertaking that is just growing in importance and size every year, it seems.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I do recognize that this approach can vary very much according to the sectors, but also according to situations. I just give one example, which is about pipelines, whatever flows inside. There are people that are working about the creation of pipelines on intercontinental maybe aspects or intracontinental aspects. They are working on the close and short-term safety. They are using technology in order to monitor the safety of their infrastructure, etc., etc. Well, right. What's happening in the Middle East at that moment with the pipelines? Have a look. What has been conceived? What has been prepared? How was the readiness to conceive something that could be unconceivable? This Global Foresight Readiness Index is pushing people inside the organization in order to be bold in their imagination, creation, possibility to imagine things that hurt them, and they do not want to see that. And that is its perspective. So it is not about challenging the already existing risk management rules. It's about going beyond that, allowing those in charge of foresight within the structure to push the decision makers in order to ensure that they do put on board a hypothesis that maybe they are not allowed to within the organizations. And this example of a pipeline might be for the day relevant. I don't know if I answered.
Latif here. I had a question, but you just answered it. It would have been great if you had some stats or some work that you have done to show the results of one or two cases. It would be a lot easier to sell your package. Thank you.
So there are two answers for that, if I'm allowed, Ingrid.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the first one is that this is a proof of concept. So we are working on the scoring with virtual data at that moment, just that moment before the implementation. Then our ambition, because we are bold for the GFRI index, is to work on an international level in order to sharing and making incentives for many, many organizations in order to creating their own set of data according to this index and sharing it with us. So maybe we'll not be the organization that will implement everything, but we are here to propose the concept. I give you one example, which is a methodological one. If you take into consideration what makes Transparency International organization fighting corruption, they have an index that classifies nations according to how a set of people which are in a panel feel about the evolution of corruption within their own countries. This is how they feel about. But what is interesting in the methodology of this index is that the index has been constructed to include about 12 different sets of data coming from relevant organizations willing to participate, including a big international council advisors firms. So the intention here is to create a core system that allows integrating many relevant data based on a measurement and on a scoring. So this is the ambition. Then the difference between a proof of consent and the ambition is then, and we apply readiness or foresight readiness to ourselves. It is to see what we see at the end in order to design it properly now. But your question about setting the data is of paramount importance indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I may ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may ask, because you okay, for the moment it's not real data, if I understood well, but once organizations adopt this this index, you said you will not certificate, but this scoring, will you issue it or publish it, for instance, each year? That could motivate organizations saying, I don't know, I'm among the top 100 of this index, or will it just be hidden somewhere or stay inside the organizations?
Thank you so much, Suzanne. The premium application for organizations, yes, the intention is to give back a synthesis about the scoring to all people that would like to interpret them. And this is what we intend to do. For that, we must ensure that there is a pervasive dissemination of this index in order to have more and more relevant data. And the scoring, in fact, is interesting because people can compare to oneself in time, but also compare to others. And there, in the synthesis, we have to think about the filters: culture, geography, sectors, etc., etc. And we talk about this serious gaming. The serious gaming, which will be anonymous, is made not only to harness the young people and influence them in order to have them adopt foresight readiness for themselves and for the future, but also to help us giving environment to the premium application in order to help us to make a good synthesis in the future. So the two are intricated. Even if the tools are different, the one serves the other.
When it comes to the timeline of the POC, yeah. So what do you see there?
Yes, I'm speaking under the coverage of Jean-Éric. For the serious game, it will be implemented this year. This is in our action plan, and next fall or next autumn, because if I say fall in the Chamber of Lords, I will be put outside. So, okay. So this year for the serious game, for sure. Now for the premium application, it's open to co-construction. And you know, the foundation is living on financial resources that are scarce. We are a non-commercial organization, and we work with researchers. So I do not master the time it will take in order to provide this premium application, but this is our intention to make it. Jean-Éric, maybe you can help me here.
Right.
Well, what I would say is about the premium application. In fact, we are working with some organizations to test the question, the type of questions that Françoise has put under your eyes. So what we are digging out, I would say, in discussing with managers and so on, to see whether these indicators are relevant, whether they can be really documented with some measurement, whatever. And that will probably take some time, most of this year. And as Françoise mentioned it, also we are much dependent on, in fact, the goodwill, including the money, the gift that organization or enterprise are ready to put in the effort. We are not in the position to say this is a prestation, this is a service that we are offering against dollars. This is not the status of our organization, our foundation, and it's not the mindset that in which we are working. We are working for the common good. So we are much dependent on, I would say, gift, which benefit of tax benefits, for instance, in France, from enterprise or individuals. And that also has implication in our capacity to move forward. So it's a kind of double-edged thinking. One is really to put our hands into the deep mechanics of enterprise and testing the ideas and the indicators. And the other is receiving enough support, financial support, to move ahead. So that's the reason why we don't expect, I would say, any concrete results before 1 year from now regarding the premium index. But maybe I'm too pessimistic there.
Okay, yeah, maybe that is, but it's always different. But I see that, of course, there should be a lot of organizations interested in this, and especially also technology organizations. The dream scenario here, I mean, in the case of because we are also looking from Global Forum now on something connected very much to leadership. So what kind of leadership will face will shape the world in the future. So and there I think that this kind of index would be very interesting to test, also to look at leadership styles that would be and I would even love to see some of the current leaders to take the game. Okay.
That's very interesting. If you allow me, Ingrid, just to jump into what you said about leadership, because we didn't mention that, in fact, pushed by us, there is in France an institute which is called the IFA, Institut Français des Administrateurs. That means French Institute for Board Members, which in fact include something like 7,000 people. And there is a Foresight and Research Commission, which in fact has taken up our ideas, but adapted to their situation. And they are building a questionnaire, which I think is being disseminated now into the 7,000 people, which is related largely, as you said, to leadership. In fact, what they try to do is to say, how the leadership of the company is really inspired by foresight and future issues and the long-term views and so on. So it's in connection with what you said and your own study, your own interest in the Global Forum for Leadership. So it's something which is done in France. When we will have some results from this survey, we'll of course communicate to you. It might take some weeks or some months.
Yeah, and I think also we will be, of course, interested to know when you will have the English version ready. I think the index will have 12 languages, so that would be easier to. But your publication, when do you think that will be ready in English?
I think we are speaking now about the serious game for the youth, or we are
No,
speaking
your publication, the scenarios publication.
the scenario, if it's published, if the discussion we have with the publisher, I think it's a matter of 1 year, something like that. 1 year from now, that's something like that.
Okay. And if you can also let us know, Jean-Luc, and we will post it on Global Forum website, how you can, if you read French, how you can get hold of the book right now. So that you can include in maybe as the last slide on your presentation, and we will put that also in. And the same for you, Françoise, if you can also put some resources where we can find more about your index, because I think this is something that we would like to follow for a longer period of time, and really to see where this is going, and how the organizations also within the Global Forum can benefit from it, and maybe even ourselves. We can benefit it from our network organization, the Global Forum Shaping the Future. So we will be more foresight embedded.
Yeah, Latif here regarding publication. I happen to be editor of the IEEE newsletter for industry. So if I can get 5-6 pages on this, I can publish it on the IEEE, and we have about.
Okay, yeah, that would be nice to have a press release on it in your newsletter. Latif, great idea, and super nice to do this dissemination efforts. Yeah.
You mean about the book on scenarios?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
We'll be able to sell it quite well, especially in the IEEE. Don't jump on your topic.
Okay, and of course we are looking forward to the index and the proof of concept there. So definitely this is super interesting, and I think we should take up this when you have the proof of concept. I would like to invite you again, Françoise, to have to show us a demo. Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And then to all of you, before we end today, I would like to, we have heard now two very interesting presentations, really connecting to Global Forum Shaping the Future. So if you have more topics on this and that you would like to nominate a presentation, a speaker in our webinars, please reach out to Sylviane, Susanne, and myself, and we will be ready. And if you yourself are working on something, I will be probably inviting somebody that we are working on together with on leadership. So we will do something on leadership, but of course you, as our network community, we would really love to hear your voice and your nominations for interesting webinars for our future. I would just like to thank Jean-Luc Aubert and Françoise Roure for these presentations, and we are looking forward to seeing the future developments. And we will be posting all your two presentations on the website, and also how to find more information on these two topics. Thank you so much. Bravo.